Before viewing video lessons, it is important to read the textbook using the learning guide as your turn-by-turn directions. Then, use the learning guide to take organized notes in your own words with examples and pictures. Chapter 2, Psychological Research. This video focuses on correlational research methods. We've been discussing the research process. We are working on the ethical research method and design step. There are 3 different types of research designs: descriptive, correlational, and experimental. We've previously discussed descriptive designs. They have the goal to measure and describe. So we could look at our online class, for example, and we could find the average age. We could find the oldest person, the youngest person. We could get descriptive statistics on how many people have children. We could get the statistics on how many hours people work. All descriptive designs can do, though, is just give us a picture. The next question is, well, so what? So what if some people work more hours than others? So what if some people have kids and some don't? So correlational designs are designed to take that data a step further. They have the goal to understand and predict. Correlations are designed to find relationships between variables. We look for variables that are good predictors of one another. So our goal here is to find variables that go in some sort of relationship to one another that we can then use to predict. Correlations can consist of variables that go up together and go down together. These are called positive correlations. I always think of positive correlations like those friends on the playground in elementary school who would get on the swings and they would time their swings so that they were going up and down in sequence. That's kind of what a positive correlation does. The 2 variables goes up together and the 2 variables go down together. You can also have a correlation in which the variables are in opposition to one another, or they go opposite. This is called a negative correlation. This is kind of like 2 friends on the playground in elementary school who were playing on the teeter-totter. When one friend goes up, the other one goes down. It's important to note that in psychology and statistics, positive and negative do not mean good and bad. So you can have a negative correlation, which is actually about something that we would generally think of as good. You can have a positive correlation about something that we generally think is bad. It's really important in this class to get that particular point clear, that positive and negative do not mean good and bad. When we graph positive and negative correlations, we will see scatter diagrams, sometimes called scatter plots, that look something like this. The positive correlations, where the variables go up and down together, will have a line that starts out down here and goes up. So it crosses the scatter plot like this. These are all positive correlations. This one is a perfect correlation because the data points all line up along a perfect line. Most correlations in this world aren't perfect, so we would be looking for the data points clustering close to the same line. Negative correlations, the line of data would go in the exact opposite slant on the scatter plot. And again, this is an example of a perfect negative correlation because all the data points are lined up all together. This is what we'd see more likely in reality, the points are clustering around the line. So when we look at correlations, we're looking at a statistic, a correlational coefficient that tells us the strength and the direction of the relationship. So this correlational coefficient will be a number anywhere from -1 through 0 all the way up to +1. If the correlational coefficient, so the statistic that is noting the relationship between two variables, is 0, that means there's absolutely no relationship between those two variables. For example, darkness of hair and grades in this class. We would probably find a 0 correlation there. Your hair color has nothing to do with how well you do in the class. So if the correlational coefficient is a positive number, then we know it's a positive correlation. And the higher the number, the closer to 1 that correlation gets, the stronger the relationship between the variables. So I'm going to go back to this data for just a minute. This was a perfect correlation. It had a correlational coefficient of 1. Okay, a correlation of 0.8 is pretty strong, and you can see that relationship pretty strong visually. As we get lower and lower, closer to 0, the correlational coefficient here of 0.2 is pretty darn weak. I really cannot predict much based on data like this. It's just too loose. There's not a clear relationship. If you were low on this variable, you could be low on this one or high. So it's just kind of all over the place. If we have a correlational coefficient that's a negative number, it's down on this side, that's going to indicate a negative correlation. And the closer that number gets to -1, the stronger the relationship. So these are higher correlational coefficients here in terms of the strength of the relationship. So if we come back here, again, a perfect negative correlation has a correlational coefficient of -1. A pretty strong negative correlation has a correlational coefficient of -0.8. And here we have a -0.2. And again, it's just very loose. There's not a strong, clear relationship. So the magnitude, the strength, goes from -1 to +1. The higher the number, whether it's positive or negative, the stronger the relationship. There's another thing that we can use when we're doing correlations, and this is called the coefficient of determination. The coefficient of determination is the percentage of variance in one variable that can be predicted based on the other variable. Generally speaking, the higher the correlation, the stronger the coefficient of determination will be, the better our predictions are. So, for example, if I found that there was a correlation between what percentage, how much of the textbook chapter you read and your grade on the quizzes, and this was a positive correlation so that the students who read the most of the chapter got the highest grade, the students who got the lowest grade read the least amount in the chapter, what I could do is I could use that information if it was a strong correlation with high prediction rate, high coefficient of determination, to get a good guess on what your quiz grade is based on how much you read the chapter. To sum up descriptive and correlational research, there are some strengths to these types of research. They are very useful when it's not practical or ethical to manipulate variables, such as in an experiment. The weakness of descriptive and correlational research, though, is that you cannot draw conclusions about cause and effect. So because I don't manipulate or control any variables in descriptive and correlational research, I cannot say that one variable causes the other. So simply because I find a correlation between how much you read the textbook and your quiz grade, I cannot just say from that research that reading the textbook causes a higher grade.